And look at that. We are live again on our pre-show for today's 220-1101 A+ study group. Hey, everybody. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Stream help. That's what I want. Let's pop out the chat room. Pop out the chat room. Pop out the chat room. There we go. Let's see if I can move windows around my desktop. There we are. It's a challenge. It's a struggle. It's a war. All right. We can pause our live stream here. I don't need to see my own stream. I'm good. Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. We got a few minutes before we start. We start at the top of the hour. It's 11:52 right now, Eastern time here in Florida, USA. Let's see what else we can do here. I got a lot of things to go through. First, I need turn the lights on, and now it's getting warm. So we have to fix that first. That will be the first thing that needs to be taken care of. Otherwise, you'll see me sweating in the middle of the live stream. That's just not attractive. That's just not. It's not great. The 1101 is not discontinued. The 1101 will still be here for the next 3 years. So you're good. You are good to go. All right, coming way down with the AC. I wish I could just leave the doors open. It's a beautiful day outside. That's the way to do it. All right, we got AC. We got. Are we recording anything? That would be good to check. If I check my Cylons down here, yep, they can see them rolling. They both look good. Cameras are good. Gosh, I think we might be able to do a live stream. I should probably get that camera up. The laptop is working. Excellent. Excellent. So good, so good. Hey, everybody. Hi, everybody. We got a lot going on here. It has been quite a couple of weeks, hasn't it, for those of you in Florida? And also, there's South Carolina checking in for you guys, too. Not as bad as it was in Florida. But we are we're doing the best we can. It's a normal hurricane season. What can we tell you? That's the way it works sometimes. We got about 5 minutes before we get started. Let me do a last-minute check. Audio looks good. That's me doing that. Audio looks good. That's turned off. That's good. Hey, Jaleel, thanks for checking in from Orlando. I'm going to go down there in a couple weeks just to hang out. Just to see what's going on in Orlando. Got a lot going on. Hey, South Carolina and St. Louis. And checking my aux display here. I was getting a little bit of flickering on the last one. You probably can't see it because this arm is in the way. But it's this window right there. And every once in a while it was flickering and creating a problem for me. There's more Floridians. Hello, Daytona Beach. Thanks for being here. When will I do 1002? I think you mean 1102, right? Because there are 3 years worth, 3+ years worth of archives for the 1002 exam, but it's sort of pointless at this late date to do any live streams for the 1002. So that is how all of this works out. We'll have to figure out the rest of this. Hello, York, PA. Thanks for being here. Let's do a quick check. Yes, all of this is good. Hey, Jill says, been binge watching my videos, bought my course notes. Thanks so much for your support. We appreciate that. Hopefully that's been a little helpful. It is a lot of information to take in. The course notes get bigger and bigger and bigger every year, although with the 1100 series, they got smaller because there's less on the 1101 exam. There's quite a bit less on the 1101 exam than the 1001. So that's your pluses and minuses. If you're somebody studying for the 1001, you're trying to get the 1001 and 1002 done before October the 20th, which is, just around the corner, quite literally. Then you've got plenty of materials to choose from. The benefit of those of you doing the 1101 is that the 1101 exam has much fewer number of objectives than the 1001. And it's significant. So that part's good. There's not as much rote memorization. A lot of the things have been taken out that were I wouldn't say unnecessary, but they were sort of on the periphery of the emphasis of the 1101 exam. So that was good. I did the 1001, but not the 1002. Do I have to do the 1101 again to get the A+? Well, you've got until October 20th to do the 1002. After October 20th, yeah, you would have to start over. So that's why if you're halfway done, you've either taken the 1001 or 1002, you better go take the other one before October the 20th. Whether you're ready or not, hopefully whether you're ready, you can get ready really, really fast. So that was it. Well, my course notes cover everything you need. Well, they'll cover all of the notes you might take in my course. But if you've ever gone to a college class and somebody just gave you the notes to the class, are you really getting the same thing? You really aren't. So notes are great. You should have notes. You can take your own notes. You can buy my notes. Either one works fine. In my practice exams, but you need as many different study materials as possible. I do go through some of that in the very first video of my courses, just so you can find those things. Okay. How are we doing? I think we're doing pretty good. How is the weather in Florida? Right now, where I am located, let's see what the temperature is. Here in the capital city, as soon as my phone updates, 72 degrees. High today, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Low tonight, 55. So there's the weather. We're just getting into the weather part of all of this. So I got a lot to cover today. All new questions. It's always all new questions. I'm sort of just reiterating. All new questions today. We'll start here in about 45 seconds. I think I've got everything ready to go. We will know shortly whether I have everything ready to go because it's very apparent once we start the live stream whether this is working so much. I do have a couple of monitors here. Now, to be fair, only this monitor and this monitor are really running during a normal day. That's my normal computer. And then I have an iPad here to do other things, look at it's sort of a utility device. This laptop normally is not on. This monitor's over here is not on. That monitor here is not on. They're really here just for you, just for your live stream. Let's go to Keynote. Let's choose to remote so I can see if that's controlling the laptop. It worked. I'm always surprised. Before we get started, I want to thank This Guy Experience for $1.99 super chat. Thank you. Who says, sadly, will not be able to take the 1001 and 1002 by next week. We don't have to do it by next week. The week after is fine. Normally, it's a 6-month thing. Let's see if I can get this show started since it's top of the hour. Let's do a live stream, everybody. If you got specific questions, remember to keep them, write them down, make a note, put them in a notepad so that in the second hour, you can ask those questions. I will be glad to answer them. Right now, let's do a live stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2022 Professor Messer 220-1101 A+ study group. This is the monthly A+ study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and you hopefully are able to answer them live and online. If you're watching on the replay, you can still follow around. We got lots of things to go through in this live stream today. We'll start with how you can answer those questions live and online. You can pop open a new browser window and browse over to that URL, professormesser.com/QA. professormesser.com/QA. And there's a question already waiting for you right there. So that'll give you a chance to try it out. You could also get an app for this because everybody should have an app for this. This is the Socrative student app. That's the name of the service we use to do this online polling or question answer thing that we do. It's from a company called Socrative. You want the Socrative student app. You don't want the Socrative teacher app. That's the one for me. If you use the app, it will ask you for a room name. And that room name is Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it right, PROFESSORMESSER. That's the way to do it. So that's your room name to go with. Now, if you do all of that, if everything works properly, you visited professormesser.com/QA, or you've opened the app and you've put in the room name of Professor Messer, all one word, then there is a question waiting for you that we call our rewind question. It's a question from last month. It's one that we didn't do great on, and I try to give those questions another chance, another opportunity to try to do a little bit better. So on this question, you will find it asking, a user in the shipping department can access their Windows desktop from a computer at their desk, from their tablet, or from their smartphone. Which of the following would best describe this scenario? Is it SaaS, PaaS, DaaS, or IaaS? I see a trend here. There's a similarity here with these answers that you will have to discern. If you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. That's the real key. That's the one we will use for this entire live stream. You just stay on that page, and it will always update itself automatically when you are ready to answer the question. So have a look at that question, see what you think of what's in there, and we will come back to this question in just one moment. Well, thank you for being here. This is our monthly study group, as I've mentioned, where we study and go through topics that come from the CompTIA exam objectives, specifically the 220-1101. Now, when we're not here doing this live stream, there's many other things that you could visit on our site. You could follow us on YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. We've got daily A+ pop quiz questions on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. And the same questions are over on Instagram with a pretty picture associated with them. That's the real fun way to do it, over on the Instagram. Any one of those will work. There's also an email where I'll send the messages, the questions to you in an email. You can sign up for that on the website. All of that is available for you to see at professormesser.com. A lot to go through. Sometime in this first hour, I will give you instructions and a secret code word that you can use to earn a continuing education unit credit for watching this. It's a webinar category CEU. If none of that makes any sense to you, or you have not finished your A+ exam, this doesn't apply to you. So this is the real key, is to go to the CEUs. I'll tell you all about it sometime in this first hour. Just keep your ear open, and I'll tell you exactly how to make that happen. We've got other things to talk about. The one that I can tell you, this is the last time I'm going to tell you about these exams, the 1001 and the 1002. These were A+ exams, or they are A+ exams. They were released on January the 15th of 2019. They will go away forever on October the 20th of this year. Today's the 4th. This is the 20th. So in 15 days, this particular series of exams disappears forever. It goes into the vault. I don't know what they do with it, but they no longer offer it. You can't take these exams after October the 20th. They are retired. Now, that means if you are studying for the 1001 and 1002, then you need to get both of those finished by October the 20th. I'll explain later what you would do if you don't make that date. The exam requirements are 90 minutes per exam. It's a 220-1001. You need to earn a 675 on the 1002. You need to earn a 700. That's on a scale from 100 to 900. And even if you go all the way to the last day that these exams are offered, if you pass both of them, you are A+ certified. And anytime you earn your A+ certification, it's good for 3 years. So even though the exam is retired, the certification is still valid. In fact, there are people with a perfectly valid A+ certification that took their exam 10 years ago, and they've simply been renewing it this whole time. So the point I'm trying to make is it doesn't matter when you take your exams. It's important that you always maintain the certification, and you're 3 years certified if you take both of those and pass them. Now, what happens if you take one of these and the exam retires? Well, in that case, you didn't complete both of them before the retirement date, and you have to start everything over again with your studies, which means you would be taking the latest version of the exams, which is the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. Those were introduced in April of this year. They're relatively new. and you'll find that those will retire probably somewhere around, we estimate, November of 2025. So those are exams that will be around for quite some time. And if you're just starting with your exam studies, these are the two that you would want to study for: the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. Very important. Notice that the exam requirements exactly the same. There's nothing changed with the exam requirements. In fact, on the objectives, the major domains inside of the A+ objectives are identical between both of them, although there are many differences once you get into the details of this. Again, if this is something where you are just starting your studies, this is what you want to study: the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. It takes 2 or 3 months just to study for one exam. If you're just starting your studies for the earlier versions of these exams, they retire in 15 days. So there's not enough time to study for that one. You want to study for one where you won't be caught right in the middle trying to get these studies done. I mentioned they are exactly the same in structure as the 1001 and 1002, and here's exactly the same structure. All I really did on this slide is change the 1001 to an 1101 and the 1002 to a 1102, and that's the only thing I really changed. Everything else exactly the same between them. So if you are transitioning from one set of exams to the other, it's not going to be an enormous change for you. You'll just need to study the things that are different, which on both of these exams is around 30 to 40% difference. It's not enormous, so you're not losing everything. You're not starting over. You're simply starting later on. You'll need to pick up the things that you don't already know. This live stream is available to watch on YouTube, but I also have an audio-only version replay that is published in a podcast format. So you can listen to this live stream. You can listen afterwards on your favorite podcast listening program or on many of the streaming services. So if you like to listen on Google Podcasts, you like to listen on Spotify, you like to listen on iHeartRadio, it's on all of those. And if you have a particular service that you would like my podcast replays added to, let me know, and I'll click a few buttons and we'll see what trouble we can get into. That's a great way to do it. If you want to see where to add this to your podcast listening program, follow the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/podcast. We also have a video replay of this available immediately afterwards on the YouTube. That video replay is by itself not really annotated. If you wait about a day, though, my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching the replay, hey, Lori, how you doing? We've sent some messages back and forth. We've done a few things this week, and after we do one of these live streams, she sits down and listens to this, I think at 2x speed to get all the way through it, and she puts all of the timestamps in on the YouTube video description. So if you are trying to find something specific or jump to a particular question, this is a very easy way to find exactly what you're looking for, and we go back years with those. I want to thank you, Lori, for doing this. Everybody in the chat room thanks you, too, for doing that. Give her a heads up, give her a shout out, let her know that you're interested and you like those timestamps. She does watch the chat as it goes by because it's a live replay chat too. Speaking of chat, when we're not here doing a live stream, we are also on our chat room, which is on Discord. That seems to be where everybody is these days, isn't it? Well, us too. You can find our Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. And that is where we have rooms set up for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and anything else you really like to talk about. There's also voice channels available. A lot of people get together and study on our voice channels. It's a great community, a lot of great people on our Discord. Please stop by, give it a chance. professormesser.com/Discord. Oh, yeah, I'm there too, creating problems for everybody. Don't worry. Eventually, you're going to need to take these exams. And to take the exam, you need to pay for it. That's one of the downsides, of course, is you have to spend money to take one of these industry certification exams. And if you do that, you can pay full price by paying for the exam on the Pearson VUE website, or you can save some money. Never pay full price for your voucher. Instead, visit our vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers, where you can get any voucher you need if you are in the U.S. or Canada or the U.S. territories. That is a great place to go because they're already discounted. You don't need a discount code. I'm not going to give you a coupon code and mention it 60 times. You don't need an extension built into your browser to get a deal on a voucher. Instead, you just visit professormesser.com/vouchers, where they are already discounted. You don't have to do anything special. They're already there and ready to go. Not only do you get your voucher for less money than you would buy it on the Pearson VUE and CompTIA website, but I even give you more along with this voucher, specifically my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook where I've written tips and tricks that I've learned over the years taking these industry certification exams that might get you a few extra points on this exam, and sometimes a few extra points is all you need. ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers comes with it. You can't buy the Exam Hacks ebook by itself. It's only available with one of my success bundles or with the vouchers. So this is something that is a little exclusive if you are someone purchasing this vouchers, and something that might help you for the exams as well. Visit ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question we looked at earlier. A user in the shipping department can access their Windows desktop from a computer at their desk, from their tablet, or from their smartphone. Which of the following would best describe this scenario? Is it SAAS, PAAS, DAAS, or IAAS? Well, obviously, we need to know what all of these happen to be, and we'll talk about what these are in a moment. But first, let's see how you answered this one. 54% of you, just over that halfway point, just a bit of a majority, say it's DAAS, or desktop as a service. That's what we were looking for. That's what that stands for. And in fact, if you're somebody who is accessing their desktop across this remote connection using a client that you could run on basically any device, that is what we define as desktop as a service. When we were doing this ourselves, it wasn't in the cloud. We just have servers that are internal in our environment. Then we're using, and we usually describe this as VDI, which is virtual desktop infrastructure, but you'll also see it mentioned as desktop as a service. Even in those scenarios, people often call it desktop as a service. That means that really the only thing you need on your side is a keyboard and mouse and something to see. So all you need to do is then connect to your desktop that is in the cloud somewhere in the ether, and you're able to access all of the normal things that you would do on that desktop. You don't need a lot on your machine. You just need a way to connect to it across the network, and everything happens on that service that is somewhere on a cloud service in a third party. That makes it very easy. This desktop as a service is something that if you were to load it up, I use the Amazon desktop as a service they call Workspaces. It took me about 2 minutes to tell it what I wanted. Give me a Windows desktop. This is the person who'll be logging in. Go. And then it just presented this screen to me. And I had suddenly a Windows machine that I'm able to use just by clicking a few buttons, and it's running in the cloud. That is my desktop as a service. A nice feature for someone who doesn't want to pay for expensive computers in their environment and centralize everything onto one service. It's desktop as a service. There were other options here like software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. With any of those, I think software as a service is sort of a broader term you could describe this as. I think desktop as a service is, if you had a Venn diagram, I think desktop as a service would be inside of the software as a service circle because it's a type of service, but it's more specific. And in this question, we asked what would best describe this scenario. So all of you that answered software as a service, the 20% of you, you were sort of right with this one, except it wasn't the best description given the options available. The best description was indeed desktop as a service. Platform as a service, very, very specifically, you should think programming as a service, because that's really what it is. It's somebody doing software development using modules that are available, sort of like putting together Legos, except you're doing it with software. And then infrastructure as a service means you just get a machine. You have to load the software on top of that. You have to load your own applications and manage the device. Infrastructure as a service is that one. That's why it would not be the correct answer. What we were looking for was indeed desktop as a service, and 55% of you got that one absolutely right. I think I'm tired of saying as a service now. I hit my limit. My quota of as a service is done. Let's skip ahead now to a broader question. This question is a performance-based question. The very first few questions that you get on your exam are not multiple choice. Multiple choice questions are like the one we just did, where there's a question and then multiple choices that are listed there. In fact, we could have got this one right just by guessing. 25% chance of getting it right just by putting A, B, C, or D. Well, if you are looking at a question, what about a question that's a fill in the blank? What about a question where they put you to a command prompt and ask you to perform a function, or on a Windows desktop? What if it's a matching question? What if it's one where you have to put things in a particular order? All of those types of questions are performance-based. Performance-based questions are basically anything that isn't multiple choice. So I have for you, just as I do with every study group, a brand new performance-based question, and let's do it right now. This one happens to be a matching question that asks, match the technology to the description. Some descriptions will not be used. So we've got a number to go through. You can see there are 4 technologies and 6 descriptions. So we're going to have 2 that are left over. For bonus points, make a note of what's left over and tell me what technologies would be associated with those. Something we'll do. We'll do that at the end and see how we do. So we've got quite a few to go through. Let's start with the technologies. We have cable stripper, Wi-Fi analyzer, network tap, or a punch-down tool. So there's the 4 things that we're trying to match with. On the right side, we have the 6 different descriptions. The first is test the interface of a router. Answer B is remove the outer cover from a category 6A cable. C is connect Ethernet wires to a 110 block. D is automatically create a wire map. E is identify frequency conflicts. And the last is intercept network traffic for a protocol analyzer. So I wanted you to match the 4 different technologies here, or devices or things, to 4 of those different descriptions. And then for the ones that are left over, see if you can think of what you might use to apply to something like that. So this actually turns into a fill-in-the-blank question there at the end. So again, we have cable stripper, Wi-Fi analyzer, network tap, or punch-down tool. And we have these 6 descriptions of test the interface of a router, remove the outer cover from a category 6A cable, connect Ethernet wires to a 110 block, automatically create a wire map, identify frequency conflicts, and intercept network traffic for a protocol analyzer. Now, obviously, all you need to type in is 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. You think that's the matching? That's all you would need to put into what ultimately is a fill-in-the-blank on professormesser.com/QA, but that's where you want to go to answer this question. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That's where you want to go. See how you do with this one. This should be one where you are familiar. I did not put every single tool that you might be asked to use, both hardware and software, on this list, but there's obviously quite a few that are in the exam objectives. If you are looking through some of these and you're wondering, oh, I don't know exactly what that thing is, make a note of it so that you can go back later to look over your notes and over your study materials to get more insight and more context as to how that particular thing is used. And I think that's an important piece of the entire exam, is that we're not looking for abbreviation and what the abbreviation stands for. We're not looking for the name of a device and what the device looks like necessarily. What we are interested in knowing, and what the exam really focuses on, is how do you use these technologies? In what context would you implement these, and how would you implement them on your network, in your operating system, or whatever you happen to be using? So make sure you're familiar with every single one of those. A number of you are putting in your answers here. Again, no Googling. Did I say again? I didn't really say it yet. So no Googling. Again, no Googling. So make sure you do not Google for these. You don't have Google available in the exam. In fact, you have nothing available in the exam. Somebody was mentioning or asking this week, they said, can we take our notes in with us? Can we take a book in with us? Can we take anything in with us? And no, you can't take anything in with you. That is it. The answers are all in your brain. That's the only place they can come from. You can't take anything into the exam. Don't really care what you use. Don't use it. Do not DuckDuckGo it. Do not Alta Vista it. do not Yahoo it. Don't do any of those things, because in the exam you don't get to. That's not the case you want to be. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's step through each one of them and see how we would match these up. Let's start with the one right at the top, the cable stripper. You want to get something about a cable setup. This is the one to do it. That would match best to answer B, remove the outer cover from a Category 6A cable. I had every intention of having all these tools on my desk to show you. They're in the video, of course. But the thing that you would want to really look at is how you would use it. I use a cable stripper all the time on coax cable because those are a little more difficult to really get the outside layer off. And you're a little more protected because in coax cable, there is most often a metal shield around the rest of the cable. I don't really do a lot of cable strippers, which are mechanical devices that you would rotate around that really cut through the outer sheathing so that you can easily remove it from the cable. The problem with Cat 5, Cat 6, Cat 7, Cat 8 is when you are using the cable stripper, if it's not set to the right depth, it might cut into the cables that are inside. So you have to be very careful. You'll notice on many cables that there's a string. And if you've ever looked at that wondering, why is there a string inside of my cable? It seems like this very strong string that's inside of that. It's not metal. It's not a shield. It's a string. And that's because you're supposed to have the cable already started. You can take the string and pull it down the cable to create effectively the same stripping action, because now you're pulling it all the way down the cable without worrying that you're damaging anything or cutting into the wires that are inside. So that's an easy one. Next one on our list is 2, Wi-Fi analyzer. We would match that with identify frequency conflicts. That's one of our biggest challenges, especially in environments that have wireless networks where there are other wireless networks nearby. That's the place to go. The Wi-Fi analyzer can help you identify those frequency conflicts and perhaps give you a better idea of where you might want to put the actual channels or connections or frequencies that you're using for your wireless network. Third on our list, the network tap. The network tap. That has a different name if you go back 30 years, but now a network tap allows you to tap into a network link and effectively get a copy or redirection of that traffic sent to a third-party device, such as an IPS, a firewall, or very commonly a protocol analyzer, so that you could save this data without actually disrupting the people on the other side. I guess it disrupts it when you put the tap in, because this is a physical tap you would connect. But once the tap is in place, you can collect data and stop the collection of data without doing anything to the data going on the other side. So that's another good one to go with. Next on our list, the last one, punch-down tool. A punch-down tool is what you would use when you're working with punch-down blocks. So you are taking a wire, you're putting it into the punch-down block. Now we have to have some way to fasten it into that block, and there is a tool that literally punches the wire directly into the block like a 110 block. So if you have an Ethernet cable and you want to be able to use that block, that's what you would use, is a punch-down tool. Next one on our list, we have 2 that we did not use, 2 descriptions. We have test the interface of a router and automatically create a wire map. Now, what would we use to test the interface of a router? There's a number of different things that could be used, but if we look at it from the perspective of what the exam would like you to know, we would use a loopback plug. A loopback plug is a simple little plug you stick onto the back of an interface. Any data sent out of the interface is looped back into the interface. And the reason that we use that to test an interface is that if we receive data on that interface that's different than what we sent, there's probably an issue there with your hardware. So it gives you at least a chance to know, is this physical interface and the mechanics inside of that device, the electronics that we have making that signal happen, either on the send or receive side, we would know if those electronics were really working the way we would expect. Loopback plugs are great for that. The problem, though, is finding the loopback plug when you need it. We used to tape our loopback plugs and connect them onto the device itself, so that if you ever need a loopback plug, they were right there, especially in larger pieces of equipment, and we knew we were going to lose them at some point. So if you tape them on there, stick them in a Ziploc bag, you're in pretty good shape. Next on our list is automatically create a wire map, and a cable tester is a great way to do that. Cable testers are exceptional for identifying problems with how we might have done the wiring. And in some cases, they can give you a very simple wire map. Pin 1 is connected to pin 1 on the other side. Pin 2 is connected to pin 2. Pin 3 is connected to pin 3, and so on. So there's the answers. Cable stripper removes the outer cover from a Category 6A cable. A Wi-Fi analyzer can identify frequency conflicts. A network tap can intercept network traffic for a protocol analyzer. A punch-down tool can connect Ethernet wires to a 110 block. Testing the interface of a router can commonly be used with a loop-back plug, and automatically creating a wire map, we can use a cable tester. Now, some of you may have gotten all of these correct. If so, congratulations, well done. Some of us, thinking of myself, probably got a few wrong. So maybe some are right and some are wrong. So the natural question, it's already even come out on the chat, is do we get partial credit? How does that work? And this is probably a good thing to think about. This from a taking the exam and sort of an overall Zen perspective. Here's how CompTIA describes this. They have a frequently asked questions on their website where they have documented and told us there are cases on the exam where they do provide multiple choice questions and give you, and even the performance-based questions, and can give you partial credit. They've even said sometimes we'll do that, but they've said not all the time do we do that. So it's effectively a non-answer. We don't know. One of the things about these exams is you'll never know how your exam was graded. You'll never know what questions you got right. You'll never know what questions you got wrong. The best they tell you is a very broad description of the exam objectives that you got wrong. They'll tell you, well, you missed a question that had to do with subnetting on a network. That's not a lot of detail because maybe there were a lot of subnetting questions on your exam. So we just don't know. And because we don't know, it really doesn't matter. If you think of it that way, that's the Zen part of it. If you have no control over it, you have no idea after the exam how you did, which questions you got right or wrong, you have no idea how they graded the exam, don't even worry about it. Because ultimately, you'll never know. It's a mystery of life. We'll never know how our exam was ever graded. Don't waste your energy. Don't waste your cycles worrying about how many questions should I get right or get wrong. I don't know. It's impossible to know. Are the multiple choice questions worth more or less than the performance-based questions? We don't know, and we will never know. So that's why I tell you, don't worry about the grading. Worry about the content. If you know the content, you know everything that's on your exam objectives, it doesn't matter how they grade it, you're going to pass the exam. So that's my point to you. That's what I would recommend you doing, is not worrying about the grading. Worry about the content. If you know all the content, you're just fine. I would like to thank at this point MG's Tech Tips, $9.99 Super Chat. Thank you so much for the Super Chat. MG says, just popping in to say thanks for helping me pass A+ and Network Plus, both on the first attempt, taking a short break before I take Security Plus. First, congratulations on your A+ and Network Plus. A short break before Security Plus, not a bad idea. Security Plus is a big exam. It is an enormous exam, so be ready for it. Work out a little bit, eat well, and then jump into the Security Plus. Thank you also, MG's Tech Tips, for the $9.99 Super Chat. Also want to thank Complex in the chat room for the $10 Super Chat. Says, thank you so much, Professor. I passed my A+ last month. All of my teachings, all of your teachings were invaluable in my ability to pass. I'll be using your videos for my Network Plus and Security Plus. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the $10 Super Chat. Thank you for the comments. It's always good to hear the good stories when people pass their exams, things they're doing and what they're doing next. That, for me, that's really what makes all of this worthwhile. So thank you for your support, and perhaps even more importantly for the stories, because that's what I really like to get. I really like to hear those stories. Once you've taken the exam, you've passed it, now you're doing the next thing. You're getting that job, getting a better job, and going to the next piece of it. Let's do some more multiple choice-based questions, shall we? Next on our list, this multiple choice-based question asks, a technician receives this message when starting a system. Quote, failure predicted on hard disk 0. Which of the following is associated with this notice? Is it SNMP trap, event viewer, smart, performance monitor, Windows stop error? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Again, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. We want to answer this question and see how we do. The question again asks, a technician receives this message when starting a system. Failure predicted on hard disk 0. Which of the following is associated with this notice? Is it SNMP trap, event viewer, SMOT, performance monitor, or Windows stop error? Is it SMOT or wicked SMOT? It's one of those, right? SMART. I guess really it's an abbreviation. SMART. SNMP trap, event viewer, SMART, performance monitor, and Windows stop error. Those are your 5 options. All 5 of these are in your exam objectives. Make sure you know what all 5 of these are, even though, of course, you're looking for the right answer for this one. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Follow that link on your screen to lock in what the right answer might be. That's where you want to go. One of these, I think, is, or all of these, are things that can help tell you what's going on in a system. So this is where we really have to determine what tools do we have available to us and what should we use for a particular kind of problem. So we're gonna diagnose this issue, see if we can figure out what it happens to be. Yeah, they do hit you with that survey at the end of the exam, don't they? You can't get your score until you take the survey. And I'm hoping everyone answers the survey as well as they can, but I have a feeling most people are just trying to get through it very quickly so they can get their score and see what's going on there. I wonder if they're able to determine that. I wonder if they're able to see this is a good survey. This one's not a good survey. I wonder if they know. I wonder if there's statistics. Do they time it? Do they measure it? I don't know. It's a mystery. They don't tell us anything. We know nothing for those. Let's see how you did with this question. It asked, a technician receives this message when starting a system, quote, failure predicted on hard disk 0. Which of the following is associated with this notice? Is it SNMP trap, event viewer, SMAT, performance monitor, or Windows stop error? How did you answer? This is another one where a lot of you answered this one pretty well. You said, 59% of you said SMAT. S-M-A-R-T, SMART is what that is. We just call it SMART. We don't say, hey, have you checked the S-M-A-R-T? Don't do that. Did you check the SMART statistics? That's the information. Now, we have other answers. 18% of you said a Windows stop error. 14% of you said performance monitor. 8% said event viewer. And only 1%, a lowly 1%, said SNMP trap, although I think that's the best second answer. It's not an answer. It's not correct as the second answer. That's the one I would have put second in this whole list, interestingly enough. I'll explain why, if you would like, in a moment. But the answer that we were looking for, 60% of you answered this question, SMART. SMART is an abbreviation. It stands for Self-Monitoring, Analysis, and Reporting Technology. That's a very long term. That's why we just call it SMART. I don't know if we backronym this, if we started with SMART and stuck a lot of words in that sounded good, which makes me feel like that's how we did it. SMART is what we would use. But SMART is a very valuable tool that I think most of us either don't know is available or don't have a way to access the information. I think both of those are probably maybe a combination of those. The SMART statistics are statistics that are running on your storage drive, on your hard drive, on your SSD, and they are calculating and accumulating ongoing performance statistics for the hardware of that device itself. Now, that is pretty strong stuff. And if you're able to access those statistics, you can get an interesting insight into the performance of those particular devices. And in some cases, you can predict the failure of that device before it fails. You're starting to see the value of this now, aren't you? Very interesting. So one of the things that I have on my RAID array that I use to store all of my data here in the studio is I have constant SMART monitoring turned on. I'm using a Synology RAID, and that's what it's doing. It's watching. In fact, that's the view from the Synology front end. And you can see all of these statistics that are constantly being monitored and maintained. In fact, for instance, you can see the number of hours this device, this hard drive has been powered on. You can see the statistics associated with that. You can look at the power cycle count. You can look at the power off retract count. You can look at a temperature in Celsius and know exactly what the temperature inside that device is. This is perfect for monitoring those storage devices. And sometimes your operating system may also monitor it. And in these more modern operating systems that we're using, it's not uncommon to get a message on your screen that says something like failure predicted on hard disk 0. There are also a number of third-party utilities you can use, some you would pay for, some that are free, that can also sit on your desktop and monitor the statistics on your hard drive. It doesn't have to be a RAID array. It can just be on a laptop or a desktop computer just to look at those smart statistics. Very useful to have. 60% of you chose smart, and that's exactly what that will do. That can give you an idea if failure is predicted, because it's looking at the statistics. It's looking at the read errors, the seek errors, and all of the other errors where it was able to recover, but we still had the error. And as those recoverable errors increase, it can give you messages like this that say failure predicted. Might be a good time to replace that. In fact, absolutely a good time to back up and replace this drive. Do it right now is basically what that's saying. Now, there were other tools here we could have used. 17% of you said a Windows stop error, but the message we have here is not the type of message you would receive from a Windows stop error. Failure predicted on hard disk 0. In fact, a stop error stops the operating system. The operating system can't continue. A message like this is more informational, and you can continue to use the operating system even after removing the message from your screen, although this is probably the time you should be doing backups and thinking about where you can get a new hard drive from. Next on our list, performance monitor. 14% of you said performance monitor. Performance monitor is great for looking at the performance of Windows and telling you how much CPU you're using, how much memory you're using, how many services are running, how many applications are being used, but it doesn't tell you very much about the hardware of a computer. So performance monitor is the real key. This is where you would really find those, be able to work through those. The other option we have here, event viewer, a similar scenario. Windows does keep a list of all of the events that have occurred, and the application you're using to provide this message on your Windows desktop may write something to event viewer, but that's not what the question was. The question was, which of the following is associated with this notice? Where did this notice come from? It's associated with smart. And lastly, an SNMP trap. SNMP is used to, the simple network management protocol is used to monitor devices, usually infrastructure devices like routers, switches, firewalls, servers, both Windows, Linux, and other kinds. And you can monitor them from a centralized workstation. There's a type of alarm and alert that can be sent to that workstation called an SNMP trap, and it wouldn't be unusual to receive an SNMP trap from a device that might have information like this one, that utilization was exceeded, the number of errors has increased, or failure predicted with a hard disk. But this question said, which of the following is associated with this notice? SNMP traps are very generalized. They can really come from any type of device, and they may not necessarily provide you with smart information. The only thing that can really provide you with smart information is smart itself, and that is the right answer. Answer C, 61% of you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another one. Let's do a multiple choice based question. There's something awry with my slides. I think I need to... Before we go to this question, I'm going to back up one in these slides. We're going to come back to these questions in just a moment. I think I'm missing something in the middle. No, I'm not. We are right on schedule, everybody. Let's do another multiple choice based question. Here we go. This multiple choice based question asks, a user in a conference room needs to connect their mobile phone to external speakers. Which of the following should be used? Would it be Lightning, Bluetooth, NFC, hotspot, or serial? A user in a conference room needs to connect their mobile phone to external speakers. Which of the following should be used? Is it Lightning, Bluetooth, NFC, hotspot, or serial? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. Please know hints in the chat room. We want to use the link that's on our screen, professormesser.com/QA. That's where we'd like to go to answer this question. See if you happen to know what it is. One of the things that you'll have to deal with all the time are these conference rooms. In fact, if I ever get into the point where you're dealing with conference rooms, there's so many things that can go wrong. Usually it's visual, audio, something like that to make this happen. So one of those is going to hit you. One of the things that we've most recently had to deal with, those of you that are in the business, is video conferencing. For some reason, you're able to connect to a video conference just fine from your desk. People in IT are able to start video conferencing when we're at home and we want to talk to other family members. We don't seem to have a problem with video conferencing. But for some reason, video conferencing in a conference room brings everybody to a screeching halt. We got to pull in the IT team. We got to open a ticket. We got to get everybody going in the room to help support these video conferences. And this is really a good example of that. Well, they need audio. What do we do? What's the best way to make that happen? This question really speaks to that and making it happen. Let's see how we did with this one. The question asked, a user in a conference room needs to connect their mobile phone to external speakers. Which of the following should be used? Is it Lightning, Bluetooth, NFC, hotspot, and serial? One of those makes a difference, doesn't it? So let's see how you answered this one. Let's show the results. And we can see that 95% of you, not even a question, you believe Bluetooth is the correct answer. And indeed, if you're somebody who's trying to connect a mobile phone to a third-party accessory, Bluetooth is a perfect way to make that happen. Sometimes you'll hear Bluetooth referred to as a personal area network, but look at all the different devices that you connect over Bluetooth these days. Bluetooth is a very mature, very well-established type of communication. It's secure, it's encrypted, and it connects to almost anything wirelessly that we would use personal with our mobile devices. So anytime you see a mobile device using something that's in your immediate area, it's probably connecting over Bluetooth. That's the way to do it. And of course, you knew that. 95% of you got that one right. Lightning, probably not a great way to connect to external speakers. In fact, I don't know of any external speakers that support Lightning connections. There's probably one out there somewhere, but it's very uncommon, not what we would use. NFC, the near field communication, is commonly what you would use to really work through a question where you've got, maybe you're paying for something, and NFC is a very short range system for communication. We commonly associate it with paying for things at a store. It can also be used for other purposes as well. I talk about those in my videos. 1% of you has said a serial connection. Serial connections are often used now these days on USB. It's in the name, Universal Serial Bus. USB is a serial connection. And you can also have the old style DB9 serial connections on infrastructure devices like switches and routers. And then you have hotspot. Hotspot obviously is an 802.11 wireless connection, allows many devices to connect and use that network connection. That's not what we were doing here. We just need some speakers. So that's the one we would use, is to have 0% though, said hotspot. We didn't use hotspot. We use Bluetooth. Of course we would. That's the best way to do it. That's the one I would choose. And that is the correct answer. That's the one we were looking for, was Bluetooth. One of the things you've noticed already, just in the few questions that we've done so far, is there's a lot of information in these videos. There's a lot of information on your exam. And one of the things that I've done, because there are 137 videos in my A+ series, 19 hours of content, I hope you watch all 137 videos. I hope you see all 19 hours of content. I hope you write down everything that's on every slide. You write down every chart that's on every slide. You write down all of the important graphics that are on the slides. But I recognize not everybody has the ability to do that or the time. So what I did was create my own set of course notes. This is the PDF version of those course notes. So everything that's in every video, I just have it in here. You miss nothing. It's a great companion as you're watching the video to follow along with what we're doing. And it's a great way in general to have everything that's in the videos available for you after it's done. There are both digital and physical versions. They're identical to each other, obviously. But the physical version, of course, we printed on a bunch of dead trees that were sitting around, and we'll ship it to you. So, and if you buy the physical version, you get the digital version for free. So it's a nice little add-on for that. I have course notes for both my 1101 and 1102 video courses. It's a great way to do it. That's all available at professormesser.com/1101notes. Some folks were asking for coupons. If you buy both the notes together, there's already a discount built in, so you don't need coupon codes. Another place where you don't have to worry about coupons. It's already discounted. The more you buy, the better the discount kind of scenario. In fact, some people are asking, when will you have practice tests available? Well, they're on the website. Practice exams are there for both the 1101 and 1102 as well. So we've got everything you need. All of my A-plus content's full, complete, and ready to go for both your 1101 and 1102. That's all we do is make content for you. So that's another place to go and a great way to support the site as well. Have a look at that at professormesser.com/1101notes. And we appreciate your support too. Every dollar you spend goes back to keeping these lights on. So we appreciate your support for all of those. And I think it might help you as well. Next on our list, let's do another question. This question asks, by default, how often does a client computer check in with a lending DHCP server to renew the IP address? Is it at the beginning and end of the lease, halfway through the lease time, each 24 hours of the lease, 75% of the lease time, or 87.5% of the lease time? I don't know why I put two that were similar, but there they are. By default, how often does a client computer check in with a lending DHCP server to renew the IP address? Is it at the beginning and end of the lease, 50% through the lease time, which you got to add percentages in here, halfway through the lease time, each 24 hours of the lease, 75% of the lease time, or 87.5% of the lease time? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Some folks who apparently have gotten here after we started are asking about the expiration of the 1001 and 1002 on October 20th. Do you have enough time to be prepared? You do not. So if you are starting your studies, all of your study materials should be the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. Unless you've already been studying. Now, if you've already been studying, of course, keep studying. Keep working towards finishing your 1001 and 1002. So some of you might make it before they are retired, and if that's the case. But if you're just getting started, don't start on the old stuff. Start on the latest where you don't have a deadline of October the 20th. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, by default, how often does a client computer check in with a lending DHCP server to renew the IP address? Is it at the beginning and end of the lease, halfway through the lease, every 24 hours of the lease, 75% of the lease time, or 85.5% of the lease time? Let's show the results. We don't know for sure. We're a little torn. Although if we go with the plurality, we don't have a majority on this one, but 44% of you say at the beginning and end of the lease. 24% said halfway through. 13% said each 24 hours of the lease. 9% said 75%, and 9% said 87.5%. These are weird percentages too. We can talk about that in a moment as well if you would like. Renewing your DHCP server. And we say lease, it almost sounds like you're leasing an apartment, you're leasing a house. And the only time you ever have to talk to your landlord is when you sign the lease and when you're ready to move out. So it sort of makes sense that 45% of you would say at the beginning and end. Otherwise, why do you need to talk to the landlord? I guess maybe if the water heater breaks, maybe then you would do it. But at the beginning and end doesn't help us very much. What we would like to do is check in as we're going through the lease, check in with the landlord. It's just to say, hey, we're still here. We don't do this in reality with our apartments. Hey, we're still here, just checking in with you. Are we good to stay another year? Well, why would we do that? Normally, we just wait till the end. But with DHCP, we do not wait until the end. With DHCP, we wait until halfway through the lease time. We check in with the DHCP server and say, I know we're only halfway through the lease, but I'm just checking in with you. We're good? Can I keep this? I'd like to keep this a little bit longer. And the DHCP server says, sure, let's reset your counter back to the full lease time. That happens halfway through the lease. Halfway through, we check in with that lending DHCP server and we renew the IP address right then. So we reset the timer. So if this is an 8-day timer, we wait 4 days, we check in, and if we get a response from that DHCP server that says, you're good for another 8 days, it resets the timer for 8 days. We check in 4 days after that. So on an 8-day lease, you're checking in every 4 days to see if everything's okay with that server. Now, what happens if the DHCP server isn't there? What if we turned it off? What if it broke? What if it's no longer on the network? What if it's been taken off the network? Maybe we just can't talk to it. And what happens then? Well, we obviously halfway through won't be able to reset that timer. Well, when is the next time we talk to a DHCP server? It's 87.5% of the lease time. That's where that 87.5 comes from. So if that original server's down, we can rebind ourselves with anything else that might be running DHCP on our network. Obviously, most networks have multiple DHCP servers for this very scenario, for redundancy. And so we're able to make that happen. So for an 8-day timer, halfway through, we are ready to renew. Halfway through, our T1 timer at 4 days wants to renew. We talk to our DHCP server. It renews and resets us for another 8-day time frame. That's how DHCP works. And then, in fact, what if that server goes down? Now, the original DHCP server had a problem. The power supply blew. It doesn't work anymore. It's not on the network. That means we can't check in after 4 days. We wait until 87.5 to talk to anybody. If anybody's out there doing DHCP, can I get an IP address, please? And it will reset you up for another 8 days at that point with the new DHCP server. Knowing these timers is pretty important. It's directly in the CompTIA exam objective. So that's why I mentioned the DHCP lease process. And that's why in this case, for a client computer to check in with the lending DHCP server to renew the address does not happen at the beginning and end like 43% of us thought it would. It's halfway through. 25% of us said halfway through is when we would do it. And those 25% are absolutely correct. We don't check in every 24 hours. In fact, your lease may not even be 24 hours. What if you had a lease of 2 hours? You're obviously not going to do it 24 hours after that lease. 75% is not the right number. It's not even in the list of things we looked at. Number that we did see is 87.5% of the lease time. And I think that was probably done because they assumed they would like it so that if you came in on a Monday, that you would be able to work the entire week without needing an IP address, and it will renew itself on Saturday. No, renew itself the next Monday, Tuesday, because it's 8 days. So the idea is that you could go through the entire week and not have to worry about DHCP being an issue for you. As long as it worked Monday, everybody can work for a week. Now, I think that was the idea behind 87.5. I'm just assuming that. I wasn't part of the RFC people who wrote this. But that makes sense to me, that it's 8 days. It works perfectly at 87.5%. So that's the way we would do that. So that's why, in this case, answer B is actually the correct answer. Halfway through the lease time is what we would like to do. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you watch this, and it gives you a digital signature at the bottom of the email that says, yes, you watched it for an hour, and you can use that for your CEU renewal process. The way you would do that is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link. In the name and address, put in your name and your email address. In the subject line, please put October 2022 Core 1 A+, or something like that, so I know what study group this came from. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, I want you to put the words DHCP lease. DHCP lease are the super secret code words of the month. You can also put in the rest of that message anything else you would like. If you'd like to send me a note, if you'd like to say anything, I love reading through them. I read through every single one of these that you send me. So please feel free to do that. Now, if you're not renewing your certification or you're using some other method to renew your certification, you don't have to go through this process. But some of you do collect CEUs, and it's different depending on what certification you have. And make sure you check in for all of those. That process, go to the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address, in the subject line, put October 2022 Core 1. That's all I need, just so I know where it came from. And it could be sort of that name, words to that effect. And then the body of the message on a line by itself, put the words DHCP lease. DHCP lease are the words we are looking for. And then you can either just send that, I'll know what it's for, or you can put anything else in that message that you would like to put. And I'll be glad to do that. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's squeeze in one more question, shall we? I think we should. This question asks, which of the following would prevent someone from inadvertently viewing sensitive information on a printer output tray? Would it be WPA3, duplexing, audit logs, printer sharing, or badging? Which of the following would prevent someone from inadvertently viewing sensitive information on a printer output tray? Is it WPA3, duplexing, audit logs, printer sharing, or badging? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Those of you in the chat room asking how long we stream for, well, we're almost at the end of the first hour. Stick around for the second hour. It's our after show where I stop asking questions. Instead, you start asking questions, and I answer whatever questions you might have. Well, not whatever questions you might have, but most of the questions you might have would be in that second. So stick around for the second hour. I'll answer whatever questions you got out there. I'll pick and choose through whatever questions you have and decide if I would like to answer them or not. In this case, we're dealing with printers. I just don't have enough printers. One of these days, we'll do a study group with nothing but printer questions. And then nobody will ever see another one of my study groups again. Maybe we won't do that. Maybe that was a bad idea. There's a lot of printer questions on the exam, it seems. I think the problem is that there are a lot of questions on the exam, and it's just that printers are a big part of what we have to learn for this. There's so many different printer types. We have to know laser printers and inkjet printers and impact printers and thermal printers and 3D printers. There's like a lot of printers that's on there. And a lot of people will say, yeah, mine had a lot of printers that were on there. But I think there's probably the normal distribution. It just seems like there's a lot. So that's the situation we find ourselves in. And indeed, this is definitely a printerish kind of question, isn't it? Nothing appears to be broken that we have to fix, but there is an interesting technology problem that has to be solved. And that's why we're in this, of course, is to solve problems. This question asks, which of the following would prevent someone from inadvertently viewing sensitive information on a printer output tray? Is it WPA3, duplexing, audit logs, printer sharing, or badging? Let's show the results. 64% of you, that's a pretty strong percentage, say badging. Badging is the right answer. 10%, 10%, and 11%, effectively a three-way tie for second place between WPA3, duplexing, and printer sharing. That's an interesting distribution for second place. It's like if you didn't know it was badging, it could have been one of those three things maybe. We'll talk about whether that's the case or not. And then lastly, audit logs, only 4% chose audit logs for this. Well, security on a printer actually is pretty important. You do want to be sure that if you are in an environment where there is sensitive information, that no one else is able to see the sensitive information. That's the real key with this, is we want to be sure first that we have the right permissions set up. So if you should not be printing to a printer, you should not have access to print to that printer. Very often sort of missed sometimes. Everybody can print to any printer. I think that creates probably more problems than not. But user authentication was not one of our options here. Instead, we were trying to prevent somebody from going to the printer, looking for their output, and now suddenly there's some printouts that are already there. And as they go through the printouts, there's salary information. There's people's medical information. You've run across somebody who already printed something, and now you're able to see that information, and you really should not be able to see that information. It helps pretty badly. So what you would need is something like badging. These are printers that have a badge reader built into them, and you send the print job to the printer, but it doesn't print it. It waits for you to walk over to the printer. This printer might be on another floor. It might be in another building. You walk over to the printer, and then you put your badge, your access badge, which is often your identification badge as well. You put that on the printer. It authenticates you. Oh, you're here? Now let me print your print job. and it prints it while you're standing there to ensure that you didn't print it, forget about it, or take an hour to get to the printer, and now somebody else was able to see your output. In this case, you use the badge, and everything is there. It just prints everything you ever sent to it because you're standing there, and the printer knows you're standing there, so it can print it and not worry so much that somebody else would do it. There are also other ways to do this. Some folks in the chat room are already mentioning about personal identification numbers or PINs. There is a secure printing function built into Windows and other operating systems as part of the driver where you can specify your own personal identification number, and then you go to the printer and type in your PIN for it to begin the printing process. A similar process and step. The difference, though, is that someone else could have your PIN and print your output, but you're the only one who has your ID card. So in some ways, I would say the badging is probably a bit more secure than using secure printing. Both of those are technologies you do have to know for the 220.11.01. However, if you're studying the older version, the 1001, this isn't in there. Badging's not in there. And the print security is not in there with your personal identification number. Those are new in this version of the exam. So hopefully that's given you some insight. Now we have other options that were here. Badging was the one we were looking for. And then I said we have got this three-way tie for what ended up being kind of second place. WPA3 is an encryption protocol, but it's only used on wireless networks, so that's not what we would use. We have duplexing, which is hardware inside of the printer that flips over the page so you can print on both sides of the page. Has nothing to do with security. Has to do with saving paper, really. That's what duplexing does for us. And then we've got printer sharing, which is a very good way to allow or disallow access if we set up authentication and access for the printer sharing. But it doesn't prevent somebody from viewing sensitive information on a printer tray because the printer sharing doesn't by itself stop printouts from being printed on the printer. It simply limits who can print to the printer. And then lastly, audit logs. Only 4% said this. A log isn't going to stop anything. It's just a record of what happened. So that's not going to help in this scenario. What we were looking for was answer E, batching. That's what we wanted. 65% of you chose that one. I think a number of you were asking earlier in the chat, you were talking about getting your hands on some practice exams. And I think that's an important step in the study process. You need videos, you need books, you need some practical experience, and you need to test yourself to see if you're really ready to take the exam. So, of course, I have practice exams that are available. I've printed these or published these as PDF books so that you can take it anywhere. You don't have to be connected to the internet, and you can go through and get a lot of information because it's coming to you from a book. These are 3 complete full 90-question practice exams. They are available in multiple choice and performance-based questions. There's 5 performance-based questions on each of these, so effectively 15 of these are available. And looking at the practice exams we have here, we'll see a lot of interesting features. I've got a practice exam here. Why don't we do a question from my practice exams book? I've got a page here up in the practice exams book. And as I mentioned, there's both digital and physical versions. I've got to get the physical version available on my site because I just got this, literally just got this in the mail. So I've got to put that post up. So if you wanted a printed version, I should have those up sometime this week for those of you interested in that. Let's do A7. I did A6, I think, in a previous study group. So let's do A7. This question asks, a system administrator has connected an external USB drive to a computer to transfer some documents. When booting the computer, the system tries to boot from the external drive and gives an error message. Which of the following would be the best way to prevent the USB drive from booting? Is it modify the BIOS to boot from the internal hard drive, modify the boot order in Windows Disk Management, rebuild the MBR on the external hard drive, or disable the external drive in Device Manager? And you can choose A, B, C, or D right here. You can either make a note in a document, in a Word document, or something that's there. Certainly available to choose from. If you just want the answer, you can, even though this is PDF, you can go to page 31. You would flip through, try to find the right one associated with this page 31. Or what I like to be able to do on these is you have a link for the details. And these are not just pages that you can go to. If you have the PDF, you can click the word "the details" and it will put it right there on that page. It takes you to page 41. And there's the question we had earlier with all of those answers. And it tells us that the answer is A, modify the BIOS to boot from the internal hard drive. And we explain for every question that's here why that particular answer is correct. Now, my problem is that I get nothing correct. I go through these questions and I got it wrong. A lot of these practice exams really don't tell you why you got the question wrong. And I really think it's a great opportunity to learn and really lock into your brain how these technologies work with each other. So every question that's in this book and every incorrect answer has a full explanation on why that answer is incorrect. And I'll even tell you, if you go through this book and you get the question right, I highly recommend that you read through the incorrect answers, because although one of these incorrect answers was rebuild the MBR on the external hard drive, maybe we'd like to learn more about rebuilding an MBR and when we would use that. So I try to put more context into each of these incorrect answers so you have that. And lastly, if you have no idea what this question was even talking about, that it's using some words that you've never heard in the English language, I have a QR code. So if you've got the physical version, you can easily use your smartphone to be able to jump to this video, or you can click on the video links that are in this PDF and jump directly to the video that the question was based on, which is in the 220.1101 Objective 5.2, Troubleshooting Common Hardware Problems. This is another point that I'm going to make about my practice exams and why I think they're better than anything else you'll find out there, is that every single question is directly connected back to one of the objectives on your exam. For some reason, I still see practice exams out there that are asking questions from exams that were 2 versions ago that are no longer in the objectives. And I don't know why they do that, but they just leave the questions in there and they're outdated and unnecessary for your studies. I've gone through I wrote every single question that's in the book. I edit this entire book and I make sure both the questions and the answers are applied to technologies and things you need to know that are listed in the exam objectives. You will not find a more exam-centric set of practice exams than these. This is both my Core 1 and Core 2 practice exams are available on my website. You can find out more by visiting professormesser.com/core1pe. If it sounds like I'm happy and proud of these, I am very happy and very proud of these. So I think they can help you too with your studies. I mentioned these objectives, gosh, for the last hour and 9 minutes. All I've been talking about was these objectives. You need to get your hands on these objectives. The objectives are free. They cost nothing, and they tell you everything that you need to know to pass this exam. You should get your hands on these. You can either go to your favorite search engine and type in CompTIA Exam Objectives. It'll take you right to the page. And I have a link to that same page if you go to professormesser.com/objectives. And you'll be able to find the objectives page. There's a link that just takes you over to the CompTIA website so you can get your hands on those objectives. They are a fantastic checklist. They tell you everything you need to know for the exam. If it's in the objectives, you need to know it. If it's not in the objectives, you do not need to know it. CompTIA rarely goes outside the scope of these. And this is the sticking point. If you ever talk to one of these companies that have made a set of practice exams that are from 2 exam versions ago, they try to point you to the objectives because the objectives tell you CompTIA could ask you anything. They could, but they don't. And that's the real hook here, is that they rarely, if ever, go outside the scope of those objectives for any points that you might need for the exam. And as I've often said, if you know everything in these objectives, you're going to pass your exam. So don't worry about things that are not listed in the objectives. Stick to the objectives. That's what you need to study from. They're a very valuable tool. Make sure you get your hands on those. Well, I know that a number of you do one of these study groups every month. You come back every month, you watch the study groups. And in fact, this is our first of 2 A+ study groups this month. If you come back on Thursday, we're here on Tuesday the 4th. On Thursday the 6th, we also have a study group that we're doing for the Core 2, the 220.1102. Come on back for that one. I've already written the questions. They're already waiting for us. We'd love to have you come back to that live stream on Thursday. I'm going to put it on your calendar. You can also link it to your Google Calendar by going to professormesser.com/calendar. The next study groups we're going to do will be a little bit different. You'll notice that the dates I have for the next study groups are December 6th and December 8th. Wait a second. October December. There was something in the middle there that we missed. Yes, indeed. November, unfortunately, will have no study groups that are available that we will be doing. Not because of anything bad is going on. It's really more of a scheduling thing. It's a very benign and ridiculous set of odd things that are occurring in November that just don't allow me to do a study group in November, but that's okay. We'll come back in December and we'll just keep this party going. That's why I wanted to tell you we're not ending. We're simply skipping. I got plenty more study groups in me, folks. We're going to keep doing these for years to come. So this is an important date, a set of dates to put, and I'm sure many of you will send me notes like, what happened in November? Like, we're not doing one in November. Come back in December. December 6th and December 8th. Well, of course, we'll still always be here in our Discord. There's still always places to contact me from the Contact Us link. That's not going away. I'm still here in the studio, but we just won't be doing a live stream until December 6th and 8th. I can't, some of you in the chat room go, oh, well, good for you. Taking a break, getting a vacation. No, neither one of those things. I have too much going on is the problem. So scheduling is a challenge. And in this case, we're just going to skip over November. I'm hoping maybe I can do some audio type Q&As in our Discord, and maybe we'll put something like that together. I'm just not sure exactly when that would be, but keep checking the calendar. If something like that happens, I'll tweet it out so you know everything that's in there. Yeah, we'll do some Thanksgiving. We'll come back after Thanksgiving. We'll do plenty more study groups. It'll be a lot of fun. I always like doing them. But stick around. We're not done with this one in this month. So stick around for the after show. We've got plenty more that we can talk about. I'll take your questions right after the break here. We've got also, don't forget about our vouchers and my Exam Hacks ebook, which you won't get anywhere. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. And don't forget about our course notes, our practice exams, our success bundles, and everything that we can provide you, along with the absolutely free and complete 220-1101 and 220-1102 courses that are available on YouTube for you to watch absolutely free. All available at professormesser.com. And don't forget to join us. If you like this study group, please hit that thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. I had a nice meeting this week with my friends from YouTube. We're doing some very exciting things around education and training videos, and a lot of great stuff is coming. And I would not be able to have those conversations if it wasn't for you. So thank you for hitting the thumbs up. Thank you for subscribing. It makes a huge difference in the type and quality of material that we can bring to you, and it doesn't cost you anything, which is even better. So do the freebie, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, do all of those things. It really does help in the long run. Thank you so much for that. Stick around for the next hour. We've got plenty to talk about. We thank you for being here in this first hour. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. All right. I am going to get a drink of coffee. I am going to fix my camera, and I'm going to get rid of the graphic. There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the after show. Now, this is the point where I stop asking questions. It takes me about half a day to put together the questions for all of these study groups, for each study group. So it's nice that I can kind of turn this boat around. And in this part of the study group that we like to call our after show, which is really just more of the show, I'll take your questions. There were a number of questions I saw kind of go by in the last hour. To be fair, I wasn't able to catch all of them. I feel like I wish there was an easy way. Can I copy and paste? Maybe I should find a way to easily copy and paste between all of these, because I saw a number of them go by. So let me first update my graphics so that you can see exactly where you can leave some questions. They're just going to go into the chat room. That's the chat room. If you are on my website right now, then you are at this link who says professormesser.com/live. So that is where we would go to see the chat going by. Now, if you're already on YouTube, it's the same chat. So it's the YouTube chat is what I'm looking at. You can probably see that. Well, you can't see it very well, but the YouTube chat is right here. I've got the YouTube console up. I'm watching all the video. I'm looking at the stream status. I'm seeing all the chat information go by right here on the screen right there. But it's the same chat that I've just embedded on my professormesser.com/live. So that's how we work through this. Who says get a drink of coffee? Well, I think I just did. So at least one person does. That's number one. For everyone else, I don't know. It's whatever you're doing. It is a great setup. This is a setup that has taken years to kind of put together. If you want to know more about at least some of these things, you can find it on my website, professormesser.com/studio. Find out more about what mic I'm using, what video switcher I'm using, what audio mixer I'm using, a lot of other things. I need to update the details of it because I never can keep one thing done. I always have to keep tweaking and going through those. What's the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? There's a lot of differences, but if you're in Florida, you don't have to worry about the crocodiles. You have to worry about the alligators. That's what we have in Florida. Crocodiles have that long nose. You don't really see them in this part of the world, but a lot of gators. Got a lot of gators here in Florida. A lot of gators. You got to watch out for them. They're nasty. They're mean little creatures. So you do have to watch out. I've got some great pictures. I'll have to find somewhere of some gators that there's a spot that's near my studio. St. Mark's has a wildlife preserve, and they have, I don't know, 1 million alligators in the wildlife preserve that are right there. So I'm going to use my phone, and we're going to search for St. Mark's. Now, I don't know if I have any recent photos in here. Really, I see my family. Did I put the gator pictures in here? I did not. Well, I'll find some for the next live stream in December. A lot of gators that are there. Professor Messer, can I do a real life event soon? No, you scare me. No, that's not true. I live in a part of the world where there's just not a lot of people. So I don't do a lot of live events. I live in Tallahassee, which is the northern part of Florida. You think Florida very, very populous, very big, very busy. But it's not very populous here. So we just don't do a lot of live events here. It just doesn't lend itself. I like doing them online. So we can all be here and we can chat and we can have questions going back and forth. Other questions in the chat. Number of questions have come up. You guys are really putting them in here now. So I'm gonna scroll up and see what we can do here. What books do I recommend for the 2201101 and 2201102? Well, I have some on my site that I recommend, but they are not the only set of books that you could possibly use for this exam. If you go to my website, you will see on the site that there is, for any of these exams on the video, on the menus, at the very bottom is study recommendations. So if I go to the 2201101 and I click the study recommendations, I'm going to be moving some of these things around on the site to make them easier to find. You will see at the very top of this are A+ books. These are the official books from CompTIA. And the reason I like these books is I know the author. I've worked with the author of these books for years and years. And for those of you that go way back into the GTS Learning days where I worked with them before they were acquired by CompTIA, you know I love their books. Well, they got bought by CompTIA, and the same person is still writing the books. That's why I like their books so much. They are spot on. They stay directly with the objectives. And since I know the author, whose name is James, I like his name. It's one of those situations where I like his material, I like his stuff. So that's why I recommend those particular books. And they're also, because I'm a CompTIA partner, I can offer them at a little bit of a discount than what CompTIA offers on their website. Don't tell them that. But I also bundle my other things with it. So if you buy the books there, you also get my course notes. So I can put things together and give you a little bit more for what you're spending, plus a discount built on top. That's sort of the way I like to work. So that's the ones that I have on my site. They help what we do here. But I realize that some of you don't want to use those books. These books are a premium set of books. They're probably more expensive than other books you might find. And there's a lot of great books on Amazon. What I would recommend is going to Amazon, and in the Amazon, click on the links that allow you to read through the book. Look on the inside and read what that book happens to have. Some books you may find are written very well for your individual style. You may find other books are not, you don't like the style. Maybe you want something that's more conversational. Maybe you'd like something that's less conversational. You can't make a book that fits everybody. So there's a lot of good options on Amazon. That's another great place to go for those. So you've got some options, and that's a good thing. Now, some of the 1101 and 1102 books are still not published. There are still publishers who have still not put out their A+ books, even though the exams were released in April. That's the challenge for this. Oh, some of the chat room would like the link to the books, so I'll just stick the link to the books right there in the chat. So you'll be able to see that. The problem with publishing is that it can be an involved process. There's a lot of big companies involved, and there's printers, and then how do they handle the digital part of it? It takes a long time. I don't have that worry. I'm the one who's doing this. So my course notes were available in March before the exam was even released. So I like the fact that as an independent publisher, I can sometimes get things done a little bit faster than what others might be doing. So that part's good. Let's have a look at some of the other questions that came through. I think that sort of answers the one for this. There was another question where someone was asking about other capabilities. Let me scroll up a bit. We'll find the one of the disc. The books are there. Someone up top asked if there's a way to start in IT part-time until you have experience to make a livable wage if you're switching careers. IT in general, obviously the starting point in any job, an entry-level position, is something that doesn't have the best pay in the world. IT probably is doing better. You're not going to make minimum wage on an IT job, but one of the benefits, I think, of IT is the ability to move up very quickly relative to other types of industries. So I would think that most of you're going to start in the help desk. You should already be rebounding out of the help desk after 6 months to a year. You certainly don't want to be in a help desk more than a year or a year and a half. Of course, this will depend on your location. It will depend on economies. It will depend on a lot of different things, but that's a pretty good barometer anyway. Your goal in the help desk is to acquire as much knowledge as you can about all of the technologies that are in use in your company and find an interest in one of them and start moving towards that interest. For instance, if you sat on the help desk and there was a lot of people that are doing networking and you like the networking and you work with the networking team, you should reach out to the networking team and say, if anything ever opens up, I'd love to put in a resume. But you already work there. You're already familiar with them. They already like you. You already understand the technologies they're working with. So there is a benefit to having that help desk job and being able to bounce out of that, to level up, I like to call it, out of that help desk job so that you're able to move up quickly. And as you move up quickly in IT, you also find that the salaries move up quickly. So the more you're able to learn, move, you're learning and leveling up is all you're really doing in IT, pretty much your entire career. And you get to decide at what point you stop doing that. There may be a particular set of benefits that you like in your job. You don't want to go anywhere. Or you may decide, I want to keep moving up. So there's a lot of great jobs out there for highly technical people that pay very good six-figure salaries. And it's not that hard to find them. That's, I think, if it's one of the driving reasons that I keep making these training courses. I made A+ training courses for the 600 series, 700, 800, 900, 1000, and now 1100. That's how long I've been making these videos, just throughout that. But the reason I keep doing it, first, I like doing it. It's fun. I like the technology, but it's enabling. It is a set of skills that allows you to take control of your career, of your life, of your family's life, and to continue to do that throughout your entire career. There's a benefit here. If I wasn't convinced of the value of IT, I wouldn't be making these videos. And I'm in the unique position of having been in the IT business, of having been a help desk person, a field service technician, a network engineer, a cybersecurity engineer. I've done these jobs. I've been in the trenches. I know exactly what you're going through. I know the process that it takes to get from the very bottom to what I consider to be, when I left, I was at really the pinnacle of my career as a senior systems engineer for a cybersecurity company. And it paid a lot of great money. And if I can do that, you can easily make that happen. Absolutely. There's nothing special about what I've done through the industry. All I've done is accumulate knowledge over time. We all are in these positions of we know nothing when we started. And when I started in IT, I knew less than nothing. I came from a very small town in North Florida that to this day does not have a traffic light. That's where I grew up. Now, if I can sort of get out of working in the fields, which was my first job, was literally getting in a truck, going out to the fields and hoeing those fields all day and getting rid of weeds. That if I can move from there into a technology job and then continue to move up, that to me says that we could make this work for everybody. And that's really the driving force behind this. So yes, there's a lot of opportunity to get jobs where you can absolutely make what, I don't know what, there's no specific living wage number. Everybody has a different number. It depends on where you are, what your family life is, geographically where you live. There's a lot of variables there. But I think at some point in IT, you'll notice that you're not worrying so much about, can I pay the bills? You're instead asking questions about, where should I invest this money? And if we can make that shift for you, IT is a great place to be to make that shift in my mind. In some cases, in fact, from the places that I have worked, practically every single one of them had some type of savings plan because they know they pay IT very well. You should be able to put some of that away and make that happen for you. Let's see what else we have in the questions coming through. There are test at home questions. There are tests. You can take your tests at home. The folks that are taking their exam, some of you may not even realize when you're taking your exam, you can take it at a testing center. And I still maintain that a testing center is if you have one available in your area and it's relatively close to where you live, it is the least problematic and least stressful testing environment that you will find. I find that at home, you have to set up the environment. You have to make sure that it's secure. Something can happen in the middle of you could lose internet right in the middle of the exam. Or in the case of the proctors that are watching you through a webcam and listening through your speakers, they may decide for whatever reason that the test is over. Maybe you moved out of camera. Maybe you're over here. You dropped something on the floor. So, what? I just failed? What? That has literally happened to people. So to avoid those types of problems, I tell people, just take it at a testing center. But if you're not near a testing center, the testing center is not available. The testing center, you don't like the testing center. Maybe it's not a great environment and you don't want to be there. You can take the exam at home, and that is a very good option for people that are an extended distance away that would like to be able to really take advantage of the testing environment without worrying about the testing environment. You can set up your home testing environment so that you can avoid those problems. Just do a lot of research so you know what are the good things to do in the exam, what are the bad things to do in the exam so you can avoid any types of issues. If you're prepared for what could happen, then you're not surprised when those things do happen. And that's, I think, from a home testing, that's what I would recommend doing. For those, this is a timely question. Is it worth studying the 1001 or only focus on the 1101? The 1001 exam is retiring on October the 20th along with the 1002. So if you've been studying for the 1001, keep studying, get both of those exams done before October 20th. But if you're looking at your schedule and you're looking at what you know and you're looking at the exam objectives and you say to yourself, well, there's no way I'm going to get through all of the 1001 objectives and know everything I need to know and pass the 1002 by October the 20th. Am I going to be able to do that in 15 days, in about 2 weeks? No, I'm not. Most people would not. Even the people that are well-versed in these technologies might be hard-pressed to get both of them done in 2 weeks. So I would say for anyone who's not already studying for the 1001 and 1002 to pass them both by October 20th, you should be studying the 1101 and 1102. And then you have 3 years. You don't have to worry about a deadline. You don't have to be stuck in that scenario. And that's what I would recommend too. Other questions in here. Let's see. And other people even in the chat room are very good at saying, yeah, if you're just starting, do the 1101. Save yourself the problems. Save yourself the issues. How do you find out if there's a testing center near you? There is a list on the CompTIA website. They can tell you exactly where the testing centers are in your area. In fact, you can even step through the process of booking the exam without a voucher. You can book to see what's open and available, book the time, and then at that point, you can provide the voucher information. But if you're just looking to see what's available in my area, you can step through the entire process of booking the exam without having to pay for it. And then at the end, you could say, okay, forget it. Cancel, erase all that. And at least at that point, you'll know what testing centers are available in your area. Is there an app for the exam? I don't know of any apps. Are you referring to my practice exams? I don't have apps. My practice exams are published as a PDF. They're published as a book. That's intentional. This can be used, and the PDF can be used without being connected to the internet. There's no operating system you need. You can read a PDF on practically anything. And that's why there's not an app. Okay, I'll make an app. Should it be an iOS app or an Android app or a Windows app or a Mac OS app or a Linux app or a web-based app? Okay, when I do that, now we've done that. Now who supports the app? There's a problem. How do we maintain the app when there's an update to the underlying programming environment? So you can start to see that's a lot more overhead than just giving you a book. And since a practice exam is text, it kind of lends itself to a PDF. So that's why I publish it as a PDF. Are there advantages and are there disadvantages to publishing as a PDF or a physical book? There is. But in my mind, my goal is to get this information into the hands and brains of as many people as possible. So that's why it's a book, because this can be used by anyone to get the information and kind of the training, the knowledge they need to be able to learn what's necessary to pass that exam. So that's why. Do I suggest the hardware route or software programming /OOP? I don't know. I've never done the hardware or hardware route. I'm not exactly sure what that is, or software route. I imagine you mean hardware engineering or engineering in general. Software would be more computer science. I did not. I took a year of engineering. Does that help? And then realized I didn't want to be an engineer. And then moved into a different line. I moved into business and graduated with a management degree. I don't have a technical degree. But it turns out most universities don't teach you IT anyway. There's not even an option. There are no IT majors at most universities, interestingly enough. And the ones that do have information technology majors have things within the major that have nothing to do with IT. As I've mentioned this in other study groups, it's incredibly frustrating. Or is it? We really wouldn't be able to do this if they were better at doing what they do. So in many ways, that's the case. Now, I'm saying the vast majority of universities and colleges do not have IT degrees, which is true, or they put things into the IT degree like physics. You don't do physics in IT. I think they don't know what IT does either, or maybe they do and they're just gatekeeping. I don't know. In any case, it's an odd thing for a college and university to do is gatekeep, but that's what they, for some reason, tend to do. So that's why. There are some universities that do have IT degrees. There are some organizations that do have IT training. I'm not saying there aren't any. I'm saying the majority of them don't. So that's a little frustrating. But what they do have is in fact, many people will say, well, just go get a computer science degree. It has the word computer in it. That must be the same thing. This is kind of the downside. If you ever go to Thanksgiving is coming up, so the Thanksgiving dinner, they go, so what is it you do? You kind of have to be, well, I just work with computers. That's sort of the standard fare for me. Sometimes that brings up other odd questions. Oh, really? Because I'm trying to get this done in Windows, and I don't do tech support for my family either, because it just creates problems for everyone. The challenge you have, though, is then what do you do if you want to get into IT? In my case, I got a business degree. And I think in some ways, computer science degree could get you to that level. Maybe you want to be in IT, but there's no other option, so you go get a computer science degree. The problem is you've now got a 4-year degree in something you're not going to use. We don't do application development in IT. We don't do application programming. We don't have to know how to do anything in C++. We don't have to build an app in a web browser. We don't do those things in IT. The programmers do that over on the computer science side. If you're building hardware, the hardware engineers are doing that on the engineering side. IT is about keeping these operating systems running, keeping these systems secure, making sure that there is a path and a set of policies for maintaining uptime and availability. That's the real key. And I think that not having a formal degree in IT doesn't stop you, because I think most people realize there's not a lot of IT degrees out there. That's the real key. It's not gonna be that type of situation. So I agree. For those in the chat room that mentioned this, I think a business degree is a good one to have. It does teach you a lot of good information about why the business is doing something, because I think in IT, we sometimes get disconnected. They show up on a Monday and say, we got a new project and we're doing this imaging project. And you're thinking, why are we doing an imaging project? Not realizing there's a huge need for imaging in that particular part of the business that's going to save a lot of money and bring in more customers, but we don't know that. We don't work on that side. We work in IT. So I think the business side does allow you to kind of blend some of these things together, which is great. I want to thank Spencer in the chat room. I know you put this $5 super chat in a while ago, Spencer. I hope you're still around. Spencer says, I got my Security Deluxe package. Thanks so much for your hard work. That's great. So you must be working on your Security Plus. Always a good certification to have. A lot of people are asking for Security Plus. And I think if you're someone who is working towards getting more into security, you've got knowledge of operating systems, you understand the network, and now you're ready to level up again into security, because security is a number of levels up. And once you finally get to that point, that's a perfect place to level up into. Congratulations on that. Thank you for the $5 super chat as well. We appreciate your support with all of those. Let's see what else. What did I do as a cybersecurity engineer? How could one get into it? Oh boy. That's a let's do this long answer. This is a big one. I'll try to make it short and sweet for you. My last formal position working for a third-party organization was as a senior systems engineer for Palo Alto Networks. This is a company that makes next-generation firewalls. In fact, they designed and created next-generation firewalls. They were the very first ones to come up with the idea. They were the very first ones to make it to market. And I would argue, having worked there, they continue to be the best firewall in the market by far. Practically anyone will tell you that. There's a premium on being the best. It costs a good bit of cash to get a Palo Alto Networks firewall, but it's one of those scenarios where you're paying a good bit, but you're also getting a good bit. It's an extremely good firewall. I can even say now, which is 8-9 years later, having left, still an amazing firewall. I keep track of what they're doing. They got great stuff. My particular job was a pre-sales engineer. So I would travel the world, mostly the United States with Palo Alto Networks. I would meet with customers. So I would go into very large organizations, in some cases, the Fortune 10 to Fortune 20 in some cases, and talk to them about security and what their security challenges were and how this technology might be able to help them. And at the time, next generation firewalls were unknown. We didn't have them. This was the very first one. So you would walk into somebody's environment and say, oh, you're having a problem with people using VPNs they shouldn't be using at work? I can block that. Like, you can't block that. It's all the same port number. Like, but this is the next generation firewall. It knows the difference between a NordVPN and a open source VPN and a Cisco VPN. And you can allow or disallow based on all three of those things. No, wait, no, you can't. That technology doesn't exist. That was what people would always say. And I go, well, I've got one in my pocket. It's actually I drug it in the box. That's what's in the box. Let's plug it in and see if it does it. And it does, of course. It was an exceptional firewall. This continues to be an exceptional firewall. I'm speaking in the past tense like they don't exist anymore. And they, of course, had challenges they want to do. Well, if we put this in, here's what we want to do. We want to block based on VPN type. We want to block and allow based on certain URLs. Maybe we got to make sure all the logs can be sent to our SIM over syslog. And we want to be sure that we can use this as its own VPN concentrator. Okay, I can do all of that. And let me show you how. And then my job was to make sure I could configure the firewall to solve all of the problems that they were trying to solve and demonstrate that it was really doing that. So obviously you have to have a lot of knowledge in the technology. First, you have to understand networking and operating systems, and of course the security piece on top of that. And then you had to be effectively an expert in the firewall. You had to know everything you need to know about that firewall. Every answer needs to be, every question the customer has needs to have an answer. And if you don't have that answer, then you got to go to somebody who can give you that answer. So my job was to make that happen. And I would show somebody in the morning. We would go to lunch with another customer. We'd talk that. We'd go to an afternoon meeting and maybe a fourth one at the end of the day. So we do 3 or 4 appointments in a day, driving around a particular area. Sometimes I would jump on a plane and go to another city for the next day. Sometimes I would drive to the next city, or we'd stay in the same city and we just have more calls in that city. So there was a lot of travel. I was away from the family a lot, but it was, from a technical perspective, it was probably the most technical position I'd ever had, and a lot of fun. You were constantly problem solving. Every day was different, and everybody's network was different. The stuff I saw in people's networks was remarkable. There are still some networks. I talk sometimes with some of the people that I used to work with, and we would say, remember when we went into that network and we saw that thing? Yes, that was crazy. And some of the things we would see on people's networks was crazy. Imagine plugging into a network. And at this time, next generation firewalls were brand new. Imagine plugging into a network that nobody thought you would be able to see what they were doing, because up to that point, nobody was. And I plug in this machine, which has complete visibility. It can see everything that everybody is doing, even encrypted traffic. So now suddenly the reports start coming up on the screen immediately. And one of the things I used to say is that we would plug in customers' networks, and within 5 to 10 minutes, we could tell you how secure or how insecure a particular network happens to be, just how crazy things might be on that network. And I often think back to the ones that were really, really, really bad. In fact, I will tell you this. Here's a story. So people in the chat room saying, give me a story. What do you mean? So this is a example where we went into a customer, very large retail customer that had, I would say, thousands of locations around the world, mostly in the United States, but they had places, they were all over the place. They were a big company. And we were explaining to them the technology, we're showing them what they do. And it was a room probably full of 20 people, all security and technology folks. And they were very dismissive of the technology. It seemed like more of a corporate culture thing. You know, there's some companies you go into and they're very friendly and they're just normal. We just talk, just normal people. But there's sometimes you walk into an environment and something weird is going on. And this was a weird going on. They were very dismissive of the technology. They didn't want to believe anything you said, and they were very argumentative with certain aspects of the things you were saying. And I sort of got accustomed to that over time, because imagine walking in with a technology that nobody had seen, and somebody says, I don't believe that. I get, no, that's a normal day for me. But this was different. They were very dismissive, and the meeting went nowhere. At the end of the meeting, they said, well, thanks for coming, but you can take your childlike nonsense somewhere else, effectively what they said. They said it much nicer, but that's really what they said. They gave us the shoo-shoo. We're done talking to you now. You don't deserve to be in the auspices of our beautiful, wonderful network that we have built, because we're obviously a very successful company and you're just a little startup. Literally 2 months later, they were massive hack. Massive, to the point that people are fired. Directors are no longer with the organization. CIOs and CSOs are out the door. Massive breach. Just enormous expense, enormous amount of money lost, just huge, enormous problems for them. And we think back often to that that particular meeting, and we wonder, did they have an inkling of that when we were there and they were sort of overcompensating? Or were they just big-headed enough? And I've seen it over and over again as people get very proud of their knowledge and believe that it is without question. And did that particular arrogance work against them, and the bad guys got in and the attackers were able to gain access to that data? Now, as it turns out, of course, when you go back and look at these very large breaches that have occurred over the years, the breach was already underway. Usually a breach is underway for at least 6 months before anybody even recognizes that they're in there. And this, while we were having the meeting and getting the cold shoulder and having people explain to us how dumb our product was, okay, I'm going to go to lunch after this and keep my day going. But when that happened, the attackers were already in that network. The thing that they were adamant about us not being able to protect them against was effectively already happening under their noses, and they didn't know about it. So they may have had an inkling. It didn't seem like they did. I would think if you knew that something was going on in your network, you're not going to meet with a third party you've never met with before about a technology you don't believe in. That just didn't make sense to me. So I think for most of the people in the room, and sometimes this is the scenario, is that most of the people in the room, I think, were okay. It's just there were certain people at the top. You often see this pretty much everywhere you go. You often say that people don't leave a company. If you were to say, I'm done here, I found another job, I'm going to another company, people usually don't leave companies. People usually leave managers. People usually leave management because there is a corporate culture, an attitude, if you will, of people at the top that is filtered down onto the people that are working underneath them. And I definitely felt that in that particular room. But that's a really good example of how, what it taught me is you can't be too big-headed. I love the product that I was representing. It did exactly what we said it did, and it did it exceptionally well. It was a pleasure as a systems engineer who had worked for other companies where it was not so great to work with a product that was just so solid. And when I told people this is what it did, I knew it really did that because I watched it and have implemented it in ways to make that happen. What was interesting, though, is that I feel like the people who were the more technical in the room were the ones that were a little more arrogant and big-headed. And I feel like it worked against them in this particular scenario because other people in the room, I felt, were not able to freely communicate to others. It's just a weird environment. You ever been in those rooms or those meetings? It's just weird. Is it weird in here? It's totally weird in here. I've been through lots of weird meetings, so I can kind of read the room that way. And so that was a really good, what it taught me, it was a really good lesson of this technology. Number one, you don't know everything because it's impossible to know everything. And number two, don't pretend you know everything because you don't know everything. And ultimately that arrogance or whatever that is, that me wanting you to know how smart I am doesn't automatically relate back to keeping everything secure. It was an interesting environment, an interesting situation. We saw that in the paper. I said, got picked up in the morning. The person I'm working with, I said, "Did you see that? We were just in there. We were just telling them how their technology they were using would not be able to stop this." And that's the situation they were in. I would love to end the story with, and then they called us to bring all of our equipment in and solve all of these problems for us, but they did not. So as much as I would have hoped this would have had the happy ending of me getting a big commission, it did not happen that way. They did not call. That did not work. Now, how did I get into that weird position of being a senior systems engineer at a next generation firewall company startup? And in this case, ultimately a very mature next generation firewall company. I got there by leveling up. And it's a combination of things. I mentioned this in my video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. I got that job by learning as much as I could about every piece of technology I ever worked with. So I started as a field service technician doing mostly memory upgrades and hard drive replacements. And really what it really was a glorified monitor delivery person. That was back in the day when the monitors were 50 pounds. They weren't LCD. They were CRTs at the time. And so, or somebody forgot a cable. You know, we sent a printer, brand new printer to a customer, but they forgot to put the printer cable in. And so they couldn't print. And so I had to hop in my car and I had to drive to the customer and plug in the cable, and they printed. And then my work here is done. And then I go to the next thing. The fun part of that was really meeting a lot of different people. And if anything, I know we don't tend to lend ourselves toward this in technology, or people don't seem to think it's this way. But just like any other industry, IT has a lot of people that are very personable and that are very friendly, and they're just people just like you and me, having their own lives and dealing with the things they're dealing with at work. And I got to meet a lot of different people. And the first job I got after that was working for an insurance company that was also the customer of mine, where I had delivered printer cables or swapped out. They had seen me work. I would show up. I'd say, oh, yeah, I know how to do that. Zip, 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 done. Off to the next one. See you guys later. And then they said, well, you know, we have an opening if you're interested in a position here on the corporate help desk. So I literally upgraded I leveled up to help desk. That's how low I was. I was the field service technician. I leveled up into help desk, just so you got an appreciation of that. So when I leveled up into the corporate help desk, this was not put on your earpiece with the microphone. This was not a be on the phone all day kind of thing. It was a corporate environment. It was an insurance company, a financial organization. I had to come to work in a tie, a suit. It was those days. And whenever I would have a problem, I would often go to the person's desk to be able to deal with that particular issue. There wasn't a lot of options for remote access on people's desk or to put those there. So I get up, I walk. They were on the other floor. They're in the same floor as me over there. I go walk over there and see what's going on. So whenever you get into those environments, now you're working with even other people. And although we didn't have LinkedIn back then, we kind of kept track of where everybody was, because you would move from job to job and do different things. So that was great to be able to meet more people. So I got a job. After that, I moved from kind of the corporate end user environment, and I got a job working for Network General. At the time, the company that made the sniffer product. That's where we always talk about, oh, you need to get a sniffer trace. We talk about it just like a packet capture, but it's actually a product. It's a trademarked product that's now owned by NetScout. I think they're still called NetScout. And it was great that I was able to find and meet more people, because now I'm working for the manufacturer of the technology. And that's where I started going out and meeting people in different places. We'd have 3 customers a day, 4 customers a day, traveling. In fact, my territory when I started there was South Florida and South Carolina. It's an odd territory. Everything in between was somebody else's territory, but mine was South Florida and South Carolina. So I would work in South Florida, where I lived, for 2 or 3 days out of the week. I would fly to South Carolina, work 2 to 3 days out of the week. I would fly back to South Florida. And I would do that every week. We just do that all the time. When I wasn't training, that's what I was doing. And you'd meet a lot of great people, and you'd learn a lot about the technology you're using. And at that point, you had to be an expert in protocol analysis. Now I'm looking at packets over the network. That's an interesting perspective. Now you're understanding how applications work. You're understanding how the underlying network protocols operate. You're understanding when the problem might be associated with a router or where it might be associated with a server. It was sort of like the Matrix. You're watching all this stuff go by, and eventually we're starting to put it together and figure it out. But again, I was meeting a lot of great people, and that's where I met a number of really, really smart, really intelligent engineers working there. I left there and went back to the customer side, and I worked for a third-party call center company in Miami after that. And interestingly enough, one of the people I used to work with at Network General just sent me an email saying, oh, I saw this weird thing on the network the other day, and what do you think of that? Now, at the time, I was writing a newsletter, an email newsletter that dealt with protocol analysis. It dealt with looking at the network and troubleshooting. And so I sent him an email back saying, well, that's funny. Here's what I think it could be. It could be this, it could be that. It'd be really interesting. Let me know what you find. Send. Years later, after I rebounded back into Network General, and Network General was bought by NetScout. I was working at NetScout in more of a marketing role. It's technical marketing, but marketing nonetheless. And he just calls me out of the blue and says, hey, I'm talking to this company, Palo Alto Networks. They've got a product that's coming out. They're kind of putting together a team of folks who can talk to customers about this technology. I thought of you. You should interview with these guys, and we should work together. I'll be the salesperson, you be the engineer, and we'll take care of Atlanta, really the Southeast U.S. effectively is what we were in charge of. And so I interviewed with Palo Alto Networks, who did not want to hire me. And I think for whatever reason, they thought, no, he's in marketing. We don't need marketing. We're a startup. We're coming hard out of the gate. I need somebody who's hardcore security. Now, it helped at the time that I'd written a book on Nmap. I had plenty of knowledge in security because I had worked with Network Associates. I had certifications in firewalls, intrusion prevention, antivirus. There was plenty of security in my wheelhouse. But because of the current job that I had, they felt that I wasn't the right fit. So this is where, even though I had all this technical training that could back up what I was saying, I still needed people to vouch for me. And they vouched hard for me to be in that particular role. And I don't know the details of what went on behind the scenes. I really don't want to ask, and I never did because I was afraid what the answer might be, probably. But they hired me. They decided to offer the job to me, and I took it. Hey, would you be interested in working? Yes, I would. And then I got the job working there. So I effectively leveled up. But notice that it wasn't all technical. It wasn't all practical knowledge, because I had tons of that too. But there was also a good bit of people you know. It's extending out help to people you've worked with through the years. And after I worked there, after the company went public and everybody who had been there from the very beginning got a very nice payoff of this, he said, well, the reason I called you was because years ago I sent you that email and you were nice enough to send me the email back. And it kept me in my mind. Well, that was nice. He didn't have to do that. He was just sending a message out to help out a friend. He said, that's why I called you for this job. And I thought that I wasn't ready for that. I didn't think about that. In fact, I'd almost forgotten that email even happened. It was just something that I normally would do with people. I just write them an email and send it on. And I thought, that's how it works, really. It's really just us helping each other and doing the things we want to do. But you never know when you helping someone else will eventually wrap around into helping you. And that was a very good example of that. That taught me a lot about how people depend on each other, and how when you have some information that might help someone, helping them out will eventually work its way back to you. It really was the foundation of what I do now. It really was the foundation of Messer Studios, was that philosophy. It was surprising to hear him say that, because for those of you that have ever been with a startup, when you go with a startup, they give you a bunch of stock and they say, if we ever make anything of this place, you'll have a lot of money that you could pull from. And I thought, well, whatever. I've been in these before. I had stock options in every company I've ever went with. The last one, Network General, was bought by NetScout, and I literally probably got $3,000 out of the deal. It was, it wasn't a lot. $3,000 is nothing to sneeze at. But in the world of multi-million-dollar payoffs for stock options, this was not one of them. It was a nice little bonus, and we got to go to Disney World for a weekend, that kind of thing. But Palo Alto Networks was extremely successful. The stock took off, and everyone who was there at the very beginning did very well financially. And it was a situation where even the technical people who are working hard, who find the right situation with the right company at the right time, can do very well for themselves, not only technically, but also financially. And it was another realization to me that other people need to be doing this. I want to get someone else in that position. I want to get someone else working their way through the ranks so that eventually they're working for a startup that's very successful, and then they get their payoff. That's the motivation I have to building what seems to be introductory certification courses. But in my mind, with the experiences that I've had, these are not introductory computer courses. These are courses that give you a foundation that you can use to propel yourself to whatever level you want in this industry. You've got to start somewhere. I started with plenty of knowledge of business management, but very little knowledge of personal computing, knowing nothing about networks. And then you just work your way. You just keep leveling up and just keep doing that. That is what I would probably tell people the real emphasis is of IT. And it's, of course, the emphasis of what we do here. If I can give you a way that eventually in the future somehow, and I see these people send me messages all the time who said, somebody sent me a message. I think it was 5 years after I talked to them last. They said, 5 years ago, I went to your site. I got my A+ Network Plus and Security Plus. In 5 years, here's what I've managed to do. And they moved up and they moved up and they moved up and they moved up. And they were making six figures at a very large company doing, at the time, I think they were doing Cisco router administration, Cisco router and switch administration. So they were making bank because of the foundation that they had built here. Now, I in no way take any credit for what they did. They did the hard work. They're the ones that had to actually make all of that happen. But it's nice to know that there's a path. And I think all you need is a little bit of, here's a little help down the path. That's what we're trying to do. And that's why I often tell people when they say, what's your mission statement? I hate corporate mission statements, by the way. There's very few corporate mission statements that are worth reading. But our mission statement is, I want you to get a job or get a better job. That's our mission. That's what we're trying to do. So everything we do, everything I make, every video I have, everything we put online, it's with that in mind. Is that going to get you a job? Is that going to get you a better job? Let's find out. Let's get you there. That's what we're trying to do. The opportunity is there. This industry is wide open. There are places to go, things to do, and money to be made. You can figure out what of all those things are important to you, find the right mix, and be able to implement those and do anything you would like to do. So that was kind of a long answer to how to get a job being an SE. That's how I got there. Was a knowledge of the technology, a confidence in myself, and ultimately help from my friends. That's what got me there. You need to start laying the foundation now. No one can do this alone. No, I guess you could, but it'd be very difficult. It's much easier if you have a safety net. And now it's so much easier to do. If you don't have a LinkedIn account, not that I'm in love with LinkedIn or anything, but it is the best corporate or professional way to keep track of people you've worked with and to be able to easily communicate with them at an instant. And it works exceptionally well. And that's why a number of you that have sent me LinkedIn requests, you'll notice I don't answer them because we've not worked together. My LinkedIn is only for people that I have worked with professionally. That's it. And that way I'm able to keep track of what everybody's doing. I can send them information. When I was working at Palo Alto Networks, when a job came up in Chicago and I knew someone really smart in Chicago, I'd send them a note on LinkedIn and say, you might want to check this out. See if that'd be something you'd be interested in doing. You know, that was a great way to do it. And I think that's the way to do it. Sure, people send LinkedIn requests all the time. I've got thousands that are in there because a lot of people are on LinkedIn, and you should be as well. If you don't have a LinkedIn page, you should make a LinkedIn page, and you should use that as your professional blog. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Either blog or vlog. Both of those are great. I think creating a persona for yourself online that it's not a fake persona. It's your persona that you are making available for others to see. That if you put together, maybe you build out in a weekend, you built out an Active Directory server with a couple of virtual machines. You connected them all together and you created some policies. You rolled them out and pushed them out to there's a group policy. You push those group policies out to those workstations. That's a great article on LinkedIn. How I spent a weekend building out Active Directory and pushing out these policies, the group policies. That's a great article. And any employer who goes to your LinkedIn, any recruiter who goes to your LinkedIn, or even your friends that are on LinkedIn will see your post. And if any job ever comes up that has anything to do with Active Directory, group policy, or just understanding someone or finding someone who knows how to do this, you've actually documented with word, screenshot, and video how you did this. So things that you're doing just for fun in your lab, you're setting up a firewall, you're setting up a filter, you're setting up a content URL filter, you're setting up whatever you're building, show other people this is what you're doing. It's a much better use of your time to take one night out of your weekend, build out some technology, and show other people the technology you built than spending time on a video game. It's ultimately a much better investment in your time. And then spend the next day of your weekend on the video games. So I'm not saying cut out the video games because that would be crazy. What I'm saying is split it up and make yourself marketable. And as you're doing this, you're learning even more about what you're building. You know, sometimes when we implement like Active Directory, we build an Active Directory server, yes, set up, blah, blah, blah. It puts some message on the screen. I don't know. Okay, click. It puts another message on the screen. Okay, I guess. I don't know what it's saying. Okay. You just hope for the best. And at the end of the installation, you hope it all works. And sometimes it does, but you missed understanding what was really going on. But if you're documenting this for others, now you have to understand what it's doing. So it actually helps you really with the knowledge of what you're working on. That's the emphasis I think you should have, is sharing with others this technology. For me, it was writing books. So when I was in an interview with Palo Alto Networks, I said, well, I wrote a book on Nmap. We can talk about the way Nmap works. I did it all at the packet level. I have packet traces of every Nmap trace. I know exactly how it works in the network. And that's sort of a combination that took my knowledge from Network General, working as a systems engineer for a protocol analysis tool, and I leveraged that into security and how security products work at the network level. That, to me, was eye-opening. I know everything about how Nmap worked. I could tell you exactly how these scans operate on the network. I can tell you which ones are really bad on the network and which ones are really good on the network. Those are really good ways to take the knowledge that you're already building and be able to market that knowledge to everyone else. That's your key. I think if anybody's ever in the situation where you're just trying to get a job or get a better job, you have to let other people know what you're doing. And that was a good way to do it. And ultimately, it was keeping track of friends, knowing what they were doing, and then answering the phone when they called. And that's, to me, that it literally changed the direction of my career when that happened. It's hard to point to things sometimes in life and say that's when it happened. But for me, it was that phone call. I can tell you exactly where I was. I can tell you what I was doing. I can almost tell you what time of day. I know what time of day it was. I can almost tell you what day it was of the year. That's what that was able to provide for me. That's how different. That's how game-changing, life-changing that particular phone call was. Happens more than you might expect. Another question in the chat room talked about retirement dates, especially for the SY0601. Let's have a look at that. I have all of the retirement dates already figured out and documented in my information. For the SY0601, that's Security Plus. That is an exam that was released on November the 12th of 2020, which means the estimated retirement date for the SY0601 will be May of 2024. That's just an estimate. We know that the exams tend to be available for 3.5 years after they are released, and so that's 3.5 years. So that's how that was calculated. It's not higher math, thankfully. I did have to pass calculus. Took it twice. That's how good I am. I thought it was so great I took it twice. Not really how it went down, but that's not hard to calculate. Just take when the exam was introduced, add 3.5 years to it, and that's the number. As we get closer to that date, that date will change and it will be more specific. That is simply an estimate. And I'm saying that because other people will watch this video in the future and say, wait, now they're saying it's December. You said November. Well, I did 3 years ago. We don't know what it's going to be at that point. But they will figure, as we get close to that date, the estimate gets moved around. You have a global pandemic, things happen, and things change a lot. And I think we'll take this question as well, where somebody asks, is the 1102 a lot harder than the 1002? Well, it is different. Let's look at the differences. I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet because that's how the world works, is with a spreadsheet. Let's pull up a spreadsheet of the 1102 objectives, just so we can get a perspective of it. There it is. So this is a spreadsheet I created just for me. It has a list of I just took the exam objectives. I put them over here on the right side of the screen. So if you downloaded a set of the exam objectives, this is what they are. And then as I'm building videos, I build the videos based directly on the objectives. That's why I tell you, you're not going to find a more specific and precise set of training materials to match the objectives than you will find on my site, because that's exactly what I did. I mapped them exactly to these objectives, and I even put on this side what video has that objective. What you were asking, though, was, is it hard? And I think the hardness is also a factor of what has changed. So on the left side, I can tell you how many of these objectives were in the 220-1002. That's what that says right there. And if it was in the previous version, I put the exam objective. If it was not in the previous version, I put that it is new. So for example, in the Windows 10 editions, Windows Pro for Workstations was added. That was not in the 1002, so I marked that as new. So what I'm going to do now is scroll, and as I scroll through this, you'll notice there's a lot of green in that first column. There's also quite a bit of yellow. Every bit of yellow is something new. It's the thing that if you were studying from older books, you would not have. And there's quite a bit. Well, how much is there? We'll scroll to the bottom. The total number of 220-1102 objectives is 580 objectives. So if you add up all of these in these columns, it comes up to about 580. Well, how many were in the 1002? Well, the total number of objectives in the 1002, 570. They're almost exactly the same size. Just have 10 of them are different. Those are almost, from a total size perspective, almost identical. However, how many objectives are new on the 1102? And 210 of those are brand new, meaning 36.21%, because what percentages are good unless you go to the 100th level? 36.21% of the objectives, 36%, is brand new in this version. So that's why I tell people, if you study from old materials, you'll miss almost 40% of what you need to know to pass this exam. That's a lot that's been changed, 40%. That's an average number for an exam change, by the way. It's somewhere between 30 and 40%, depending on what you're working on. I would not say, because the question really wasn't about how many objectives have changed. It was really about, is it harder? Is it a more difficult exam? And I would tell you that I think on both the 1101 and 1102, I think the exams are more directed. The exam objectives are more specific to what you need to know, that they really have focused in on what's the most important things for you to know as a technician. But I think the difficulty level on both of those exams is about the same. I think the 1002 and 1102 are about as hard. They're both about the same difficulty level. So I don't think one is more difficult than the other to get through. I think they're both pretty much the same. Question, somebody said, hey, can we get those same stats for the 1101? You sure can. because these are kind of different. We'll go to our 1101 spreadsheet. Looks very similar. Total number of 220-1101 objectives, 392 objectives. The number of objectives on the 1001, see if I can get this all on the screen. I can. 565. Wait a second. We lost 173 objectives on the 1101. Are you kidding? We have fewer, not just 10 off. 173 of them are no longer on the 1101 exam. That's extensive. That's a big cut. I think what CompTIA did was take your feedback. A lot of you said in the feedback, and some of you can even say this now because some of you are still studying for the 1001, is I'm having to memorize a lot of stuff. With any certification exam, there's memorization. You have to know all of it, in fact. But there's rote memorization on these exams you have to know. For example, on the 1001, there's an entire section on types of computers, CAD/CAM systems, home media system, a thick client, a thin client. There's this whole set of different systems and how they are configured. What's more important on a CAD/CAM system, memory or storage or redundancy or power? Got all these things. They got rid of that entire section. The entire thing, it's gone. So it's not there. So that's why they really minimize the number of things that you have to memorize on this exam to just the core pieces. However, keep in mind, even though it's smaller, 110 of those objectives are brand new. It's almost a third of the exam's brand new. A fourth of the exam. We'll say 20-something per. Well, how about 28.06%? How about that? Why don't I just look at the numbers I already calculated? 28.06% is brand new on there. And so that's why 30%, when I say 30 to 40% has changed, about 30 to 40% has changed in this exam. So that's about right. Please make a video on ticketing systems. I did. It's part of the 220-1102 exam objectives. So, of course, there's videos on it. There's a whole section on the 1102 on ticketing. Where is it? It's up in section 4. It's domain 4. And it's called, oddly enough, ticketing systems. It's 4.1 on the 1102. So all of the ticketing system information you need to know about user information, device information, description of problems, categories, severity, escalation levels, clear, concise written communication, problem description, progress notes, problem resolution. It's all in there. It's all my ticketing systems video. So they're already there. It's also as an aside, that's how you figure out where my videos are, is you look at the exam objectives, you see, oh, ticketing systems is in section 4.1 of the exam objectives. Let's do that. Let me tell you how you get there. So let's go to the 1101. I'm going to pull up the objectives for, the 1102 exam. So these are the objectives for the 1102. I'm going to scroll up here to section 4.1. It's in domain 4.0 of operational procedures. Given a scenario, implement best practices associated with documentation and support systems information management. And the first column of bullets is ticketing systems. User information, device information, description of problems, categories, severity, escalation levels, clear, concise written communication, problem description, problem notes, problem resolution. You just saw that, right? That you saw me reading through all of those. We were looking at, that's where they came from. So looking at this, if you're reading through the objectives and you think, I need a video on ticketing systems, well, it's in section 4.1. So what we should do is go to the Professor Messer website. Let's do this. We'll load up the site. We will go to the 220-1102 free video link right there at the top of the screen. We'll thank Google for the advertisement that they've added here. Here's my training course index. We're going to scroll down to section 4.1. And section 4.1, documentation and support systems, the very first video is ticketing systems. That's how you find something in the Professor Messer video training course right there. It all links together so you can find everything you need the best way you can. Now, I realize listing all of these videos in the same order as the exam objectives may not be the most conducive to studying. Things that are in section 4 might be good to learn before you learn things in section 1. There's been cases like that. But it's difficult to find things if it's all scrambled up. That's why I keep things in the same order as the exam objectives. That's why they're there. So that should give you some ideas, some perspective as to why it is set up that way and what we do with that. Well, I think that's a very good place to sort of end our session for today, but we're certainly not done. Come on back on Thursday. We'll do the same study group except for the 1102. Do I have a ticketing system question? I don't know if I do or not. But we'll talk about the 1102. We'll talk about the brand new 1102 practice exams that are available on my site now. I've got all new questions. And, of course, you're able to have the after show and ask any new questions of me on Thursday. Stop back by just in 2 days from now. We'll just do this all over again, have a good time. And then a week later, we do Network Plus. A week after that, we do Security Plus. There's always something going on, at least until November. And then we'll do it in December. We'll skip November. We'll go to December. Just something to keep in mind. I want to thank you all for being here. We have such a great time on these live streams. Thank you for your work in the first hour, answering the questions. I think we learned a lot. And in the second hour, I thank you for your questions to me. It gives me a chance to kind of give you a perspective of what we're doing here and why we happen to be doing it. Maybe at least it can help you with some of the things you're working on with your studies. Thanks so much for your support, for your super chats, for everything that you do throughout the month. We could not do this without you. We appreciate your ongoing support. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group.